The Utah Jazz just became very interesting trade partners, but would they want Jrue Holiday? Let's work through it. Let's make a trade happen right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Beantown, be ever ready. It's the C's. Who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis. Recap the madness every game, every practice. Prime time, Depp and D White on the sideline. Raining Jays, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. I hit you with a free podcast Monday through Friday, through all of June, through all of July. We'll bring it down to 3 days a week in August and September, but then we ramp it back up again. Tons of podcasting all summer long, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Watch a show on YouTube, get into the comment section there, and share your thoughts with me, John Karalis, beat writer covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've been doing this job for about 20 years, and I've written a couple books on the Celtics, so I love talking and writing about the Boston Celtics. We'll get to trades in the second segment. I'm bringing on Leif Thulin, who is part of the Locked On Jazz podcast, talk about the potential for a deal between these two teams. I'll hash through all that stuff in the third segment, but I want to start with Austin Ainge. We joked about it yesterday with Chris Forsberg. Austin Ainge joins the Utah Jazz. He is now he was the assistant GM in Boston, and now he is the president of basketball operations for the Utah Jazz. He, in his introductory press conference, said he was in a meeting with the new owners, plotting out the future for the Boston Celtics when he got a text from the Jazz owner saying, "Hey, got a question for you." And then that started the ball rolling and led to him taking this job. He also joked that as soon as Brad Stevens found out and got the call from the Jazz asking permission and all of that stuff to officially do this, and of course Brad did it because you want your team, you want people around you to succeed, and obviously going to join his dad and going back to Utah and all of that stuff is important to Austin. So, but Austin jokes like Brad started trying to negotiate with me right away, which was hilarious. And so I think a couple of things here. First of all, congratulations to Austin Ainge. It is a loss for the Celtics because he was instrumental in a lot, especially the draft stuff. But he was part of the team that made a lot of the decision-making. And Brad Stevens is, I think, a great leader. He takes in a lot of information and they work together. It's a collaborative effort to put a plan together and they execute the plan. So it is a loss and it is a gain for the Utah Jazz. But also it is an important, unique situation now when it comes to the Celtics. Teams don't just make trades. People don't just say, okay, NBA, we're open for business. Jrue Holiday is available. Let's have our first ever discussions about Jrue Holiday. No. Once the second apron came into play, if people like me are talking about, well, it looks like the Celtics are going to need to trade Jrue Holiday, then the Celtics have been having that discussion for quite some time. They are paid to have these long-term visions and understand, like, I think they gave Holiday that contract, first of all, in order to make him happy. Second of all, to reward him for everything. And third, they knew they were going to have to start clearing money away. Second apron, the second apron stuff, they were going to have to, like, they were planning for all of this for a while. Austin Ainge knows everything that the Celtics are doing. He knows everything. And that's a good thing. Teams with good relationships with one another make deals. You have to trust the team that you're working with, that they're not going to just run off and run to the media. You have to trust that discussions are going to be kept private. Things aren't going to happen until they happen. And that's why you see a tendency for GMs, teams, to just deal with some of the same teams over and over again, right? They once you develop a good rapport, you go back there and you lean on what you're comfortable with. So having Austin in Utah I think it's a really, really good thing. People might be like, no, it's horrible. He knows every secret. Like, there's no secrets. He knows exactly what the Celtics are trying to do. He knows what the Jazz are trying to do. And now you have somebody that you can trust to keep things quiet and to talk to. They obviously have a good communication. So Austin Ainge and Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens are going to talk because the Jazz have players with expiring contracts. They are a team that's looking to move some of these guys and start building a culture. Austin Ainge said when he was asked about building a team in a place that's tough for free agents. They're not clamoring to go to Salt Lake City, but he said, "I think it's a great place." He says, "I think you build it the right way, stacking good decisions over and over and over. Players want hope. They want to win. They want great culture. They want great coaching. They want great teammates. So that's what we have to give them." Well, the Celtics have great culture. They have great teammates. They have guys who know how to win. The Jazz are starting kind of from scratch. They have the 5th overall pick. They have the potential to draft a point guard, Trey Johnson. Adding a Celtic, specifically Jrue Holiday, is something that I think seems to make sense. Look, the Celtics have a heavy influence on the Jazz. Danny Ainge is there. Austin Ainge is there now. Will Hardy is there. Avery Bradley is their vice president of player development. They have a heavy influence there. So why not continue that? I think the relationship that these guys have, I think Austin's understanding of exactly what the Celtics want to do and his understanding eventually of the Jazz and what they're trying to accomplish, I think it points the Celtics in a very specific direction. It makes a trade between these two teams make perfect sense. Now, the next question is, obviously, we have to see if there's a fit. They're not the only team out there that Brad Stevens has a good relationship with. So I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it just makes it so much more likely. It makes it an easy fit to have that discussion. I think Jrue Holiday makes sense in Utah. Does he, though? I'm going to go to Leif Thulin, one of the hosts. He's a fill-in host for the Locked On Jazz. He has a good sense of what they're thinking. We'll go to him next and ask him that question and start to hash out, is there the potential here for a trade between these two teams? That's all coming up when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. I talked about this yesterday. I talk about it all the time. I'm very open about my therapy journey. I have been dealing with depression, and I feel like I have a good grip on it because I've been able to talk through some things. I have learned a lot about myself. I have come to understand a little bit better how I work, and think that's important. Men, it's okay to go down this path yourself. Now, maybe you don't want everybody to know about it, and that's okay. I'm fine sharing it. Maybe you're not. You can do it online. 6 million men in the United States experience depression. Many go undiagnosed. Talking to someone, a friend, a loved one, or a therapist can make a huge difference. You can do it online at BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com is online, 35,000 licensed professionals. They can help you do everything you need. Healthy coping tools, being a better version of yourself, learning how to set boundaries. BetterHelp makes it easy to find a therapist who understands you. You can connect from anywhere, and you can switch. If that relationship doesn't work, you can fit sessions into your schedule with just a click. You can do it anywhere at just about any time, and it's You can do it wherever. So you don't have to be like, hey, I'm going to the therapist. You don't have to make it a big deal. I understand it's tough. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. You can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA, Locked On NBA Game Night, previewing the NBA Finals all week long. And then on Friday, me, Jake Madison, we're both covering Game 1 of the NBA Finals. So go check it out on Locked On NBA, wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get into the meat of this discussion. Me, Leif, Thulin, we're getting into this, hashing things out. Can the Celtics and the Jazz maybe work something out? All right, Leif Thulin here from the Locked On. What do you got? You do like 20 podcasts for us, don't you? You do Locked On NBA Big Board. You are in on the Locked On Jazz. What else are you doing?
I've been hosting Locked On Wizards for the last 3 weeks, but that's been a step in gap, and I do Locked On College Basketball as well. So a lot of basketball for me.
It's Locked On Leif over here. So all right, so you literally putting on the Jazz hat for us as we try to explore. I just went over Austin Ainge. He's the new boss. He's in charge. They introduced him. They said we are plugged into him. So he knows everything the Celtics are trying to do. And I think the funny thing is that he said Brad Stevens started trying to negotiate with me right away. So let's dip into this. Celtics are trying to cut costs. I like a couple of the players that are on the Jazz, specifically Collin Sexton as a potential, just, hey, let's take a look. He's an expiring contract. Jordan Clarkson's expiring contract. John Collins, I assume he's opting in. He's going to be an expiring contract. There are places the Celtics can go. So let me ask you this, first of all, from the Jazz perspective, you look at the Celtics trying to cut salary. Can I interest you in a culture setter, great teammate, guy who might mentor a future point guard that you may draft, Jrue Holiday?
You can interest me in Jrue Holiday in the sense that I think the Jazz need to accept taking on a salary, because though the Jazz don't want to tank, and that's what Austin Ainge's press conference is drawing a claim for, saying that they're going to not manipulate lineups and they're going to play straight up and, ethical basketball, or however you want to put it. The idea of having a guy like Jrue Holiday to teach young players, presumably if the Jazz draft a guard, it would be even better. But I've been saying for a couple of years that I think the Jazz should be willing to absorb a contract, whether it's the Damian Lillard where he doesn't play for a year, but you're paying tons of money and your team therefore is not going to be very good, but you enable yourself in the future to have a lot of space. I think Jrue Holiday fits that mold. And so it does interest me slightly. I think that Collin Sexton is certainly on the table from the Jazz's perspective. Collin Sexton, I do have my concerns with in terms of what he'd bring to Boston, but that's not for the Jazz to display. That's Boston's loss if they were to do that. My thinking is Collin Sexton can score. He can score basketball, but you don't really want a guy who's a fairly efficient scorer in a losing environment, but has been kind of a empty calorie scorer to be a 6'1" guard on a team that still likely hopes to contend, presumably if they keep the Tatum and Brown combination together.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So, look, I like Sexton. He's a competitor. Obviously, he has his drawbacks. And the one thing from the Celtics perspective is we know the team is going to get worse no matter what. We're not out there looking for fair market value for Jrue Holiday. We know that you're taking back. The goal isn't to take back players or a player who is going to make the Celtics better, but can he fill a role? The Celtics need some scoring, and maybe either he's coming off the bench or whatever. Maybe it's not him. Maybe it's Clarkson. Maybe it's Collins. Any one of these guys is in the picture. I don't know who the Jazz will be looking at drafting. You're the draft guy. I have not paid attention to the draft very much. I know Cooper Flagg and then Dylan Harper, and like, okay, after that, well, I don't know. But is if you do draft like a Trey Johnson, like having a Holiday around to mentor him, I feel like from a Jazz perspective, that alone makes sense for a team that's in a financial situation. Can we agree that there's, like, you did just lay it up, but can we just solidify for what the Jazz are trying to do, having a vet like Holiday around makes sense?
Yeah, that was my preferred option. So I didn't think that would be the first one we discussed, in the sense that I'd imagine that the Celtics would ask for more, but I want Trey Johnson at 5. Like, that is the preferred guy that if he's at 5, I'd be very excited for the Utah Jazz. And there's no better mentor for Trey Johnson than Jrue Holiday. And they're not one-to-one players, so that's not my point of it. It's just this guy's been a consummate pro, gets it done on both ends, can play still, and you can have him develop winning habits for these younger players. He doesn't necessarily hurt the growth of a guy like Keontae George either, because he's so good defensively, and without the ball, Keontae played well at the 2 guard, while Isaiah Collier was the point guard. He can help Isaiah Collier because he's such a dogged defender. Isaiah Collier can become a better defender and a better distributor, learning the tricks of the trade from Jrue Holiday. So, and I don't think he impacts the Jazz's longing to lose, in the sense of if they choose to still be not very good and not make a trade for a guy who can really push them into contention. I think Jrue Holiday's impact is more of the cultivating a culture that is something that can win in the future, as opposed to turning around your wins and losses in the short term. And I think that accomplishes a lot of goals for the Jazz. The question is going to be, do the Jazz have to give up picks to the Celtics to get Jrue Holiday? Is it money match? Like, what does the money match take? Because Collin Sexton's paid fairly well, but he's not paid the same amount as Jrue Holiday. So does that mean there's got to be another player in there? Those are the logistics. I'd be conservative, but that is the trade possibility. When you asked me to think of some ideas, that was the first one that came to my head of I'd like Jrue Holiday to be on the Jazz's payroll, eventually not be on the Jazz's payroll, and help instill a culture.
I'm just out of curiosity, when you said I didn't think we'd be discussing him first, who would you think? What did you think when Boston comes calling? What was your impression?
Well, my first thought, because Jazz fans have been talking about so much, was Jaylen Brown. I knew that you weren't necessarily going to pitch me on Jaylen Brown, but that was like my first thought. I was thinking of packages for Jaylen Brown. And then I thought initially about, okay, what does it look like? Do they want an established player with some upside? Maybe it's a Collin Sexton, like you said. And is it for future picks for Boston, and maybe a Sam Hauser, someone like that, who just, fills a roster role, but the Jazz give up a player that they don't see as conducive to success for their long-term future, and get someone back along with picks. But I hadn't done as much preliminary research I would have liked about what Boston has in the future. So I was just not expecting the Jrue Holiday to be the first thing. But when I was starting my research, that was the first thing that came to my mind. So we were on the same accord. Yeah.
Like my feeling is Boston is not blowing it up. And like, if we're doing pipe dreams, I think the Celtics would like to maybe get their hands on Walker Kessler. And now I don't know I really don't understand what Utah's feelings are on Kessler. What do you think? Is he somebody that they value? He's 24 years old. He, we've seen him play well, but also he's like had stretches where he hasn't. So where do you think he stands with the Jazz? Is he attainable?
I don't think he would be someone the Jazz will trade this offseason, barring getting a superstar back. I think if the Jazz were to not have Walker Kessler start on day one of next season, it would mean that the Jazz made a blockbuster trade for a player that would help them win immediately. I think he's one of the guys they believe is a foundational piece, not necessarily an all-star piece, but a guy that is instrumental to winning down the road. And that's what the Jazz want to do. He's an anchor in the middle. This year is his third year after what we'd call as a sophomore slump, and his rookie year was sensational. His third year, he was able to turn it around and be one of the most efficient finishers around the rim in the league. He was one of the best rebounders. He was actually the top offensive rebound percentage guy in the NBA, and he's blocked 2.4 shots per game for 3 straight seasons. So this is a guy that has put up impressive numbers, albeit on a poor team, but his game at least you'd think would convey to winning, in the sense that he brings defense and a lob threat. And that's, a lot of teams have found that to be pivotal to success. And the Jazz don't have a lot of other guys that have, plug and play roles that look comparable to what you see in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's unfortunately what I thought you were going to say. Because Collin Sexton and Walker Kessler work for Jrue Holiday, but that seemed like that's just not something that would happen. But yes, I think the primary focus in this discussion is Jrue Holiday. Collin Sexton is attainable. Jordan Clarkson is attainable. Who else do you think could be thrown, like Kenyon Martin, Taylor Hendricks? Are those guys available, do you think, in like just salary matching type of things?
I doubt Taylor Hendricks would be, because the Jazz have high hopes for him. He had destroyed his knee on the third game of the season this year. The Jazz at the end of this prior season were very happy with the progress he made in the final 2 months where he shot the ball well. It was the 9th pick of the draft. I'd imagine there's a world in which you could inquire about Keontae George or Isaiah Collier, whichever one the Jazz think is less high on the pecking order. I think Clarkson and Sexton are the most likely players to be traded by the Jazz this offseason. I think John Collins is likely to be traded, and he actually had a under-the-radar very good season last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well he fits into what Boston's trying to build, and because you saw him plenty of times in Atlanta. This is a guy who has often said, okay, he is what he is. He's not particularly great, but he improved his shooting drastically. He was a very good shooter. At one point was on the 50-40-90 club for about 3/4 of the season for the Jazz before falling off a little bit. But a great season from John Collins. He improved his stock tremendously, but it's a guy you have to pay handsomely, and I'm not sure he adds to your playoff chances as much as Boston fans are accustomed to.
Yeah, so John Collins straight up for Jrue Holiday works. Collin Sexton, you need a contract of about 4. The number for Walker Kessler works. The number for Keontae George doesn't. You need a little extra something there, which I don't know if the Celtics can do. And the reason I'm asking about these guys is I'm looking for an expiring contract. But it's good to get some perspective on some of these guys who might be available. I think that's kind of what we were expecting. And the most important thing is I wanted to hear from a Jazz person on the reality of Jrue Holiday in Utah. And it seems like that's something that fans and the team would like. And I think their financial situation allows for that. And then in a couple of years, if it's time to move him, I'm sure the Ainges get creative on trading guys out. So I appreciate your perspective, man. Thanks for hopping on.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
So what does that all mean? Let's make sense of it. Can we find a way to get Jrue Holiday to Utah in a deal that makes sense? We'll find out next. Today's show is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, every single call you miss is money left on the table. I know for me, when I have an urgent need, if I call somebody, whether it's a plumber or I need somebody right away, if that person doesn't answer, I am on to the next. You cannot have that be the case for you. You need Open Phone. It's the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and texts all from a single app. They share an inbox. The shared inbox feature is a game changer because your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And the AI agent handles your after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering you 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. If you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. You want to get caught up on the draft? Locked On NBA Big Board is the place to go. Locked On NBA Big Board with Rafael Barlow and friends has the whole draft process covered. So go check it out. It's you want to binge something between now and the draft to get yourself caught up? That is the way to go. So let's get back into this. Leif was kind enough to give us a little bit of insight. So Jrue Holiday works. I like the idea. I'm glad that somebody in Utah is agreeing with me. I think Holiday fits a lot of what the Jazz need. You want a culture setter, a culture builder. Very simple. You trade for Holiday in a couple of years, maybe the Lakers or the Clippers. I'm not saying that you don't consider these other deals somewhere else. I'm just saying this particular thing makes sense. Holiday to the Jazz makes sense. Now, what makes sense in return compared to other teams? I want to be clear. The best possible deal is the deal you should do, whether it's with the Jazz, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Knicks. I don't care who it is. If the deal makes sense, the deal makes sense. But I think the Jazz, first of all, like I said, with Austin Ainge there, it makes sense because you got somebody that you trust that you can deal with. Secondly, I do think that they would take Jrue Holiday. Third, they have players I don't mind. Now, John Collins, not at the top of my list, but listen, he's a guy who can score. He's 27. He did just come off a very good year. He's gonna make $26.6 million in a player option. Is that ideal? No. And so not my top choice, but money-wise, it works. You can just do Collins for Holiday. You save yourself, $6 million, $5.5 million. It starts the process. It's not the big money saver. You could also turn around and flip John Collins. We can go that paperclip trading route and say Collins for somebody else. You start with Collins and you move to a guy, maybe somebody else wanted Collins and they didn't have what the Jazz want. Then maybe it extends to a 3-team trade, but however it works, there's a possibility there. You can do Jordan Clarkson, but you have to take back a bigger salary. Clarkson, Kenyon Martin Jr. You're entering some of the same issues that that's $24.5 million. So your savings aren't entirely there, but those are 2 expiring contracts. Collin Sexton for $19 million is a guy that I think works. Making the money match on that is a little bit of a problem. The pipe dream of Collin Sexton and Walker Kessler, probably not happening. But we can all dream. They can expand these deals. They can get a 3rd team in. I think there's a possibility that the Celtics can work a deal where Holiday goes to Utah. I think Austin Ainge would like Holiday in Utah. I think the Celtics can get one of these guys, one of these expiring contracts. The reason I'm talking about expiring contracts is because they're guys that you can let walk next year if you need to. You have that option, but you're also trading for bird rights. So Collin Sexton, $19.2 million essentially. If you love him, you have his bird rights. If you say, hey, well, we're not going to pay you 19, we'll pay you 14. And, maybe that's more tolerable for them. Maybe the market for you have to understand the market for these guys. They have to understand the market for themselves. I don't know what Collin Sexton gets on the open market next summer. There's not going to be any real money for him out there. So maybe the Celtics get him at 10 million. Maybe they get him at less. I don't know. Now he is a small guard. There's another small. You don't want to do like too many small guards on the same team, but there is value here. I want to stress again, you're not going to be as good. None of these deals make the Celtics as good. I know that they don't make the Celtics as good. That's not the point. Point is money, savings, and building a team that's less bad than it has to be because we're trying to stay within contention here. I'm trying to look at teams that have options, and Collin Sexton is an option. You can keep him, you can cut him, you can trade him at the trade deadline. He's an expiring deal. There's options here. Just because you have him now and you make a move for him now doesn't mean he has to last the whole season. Doesn't mean he has to stay beyond next season. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of him either. So I like the possibilities here with Utah. Whether it's a straight deal, whether it's part of a multiple team deal, I think everybody understands the dynamics that the second apron brings. So there is something here. I think there's a real possibility of a trade with the Utah Jazz. I'm not saying that excludes trades with somebody else. Holiday can go somewhere else. That's also like, I can see a trade with Detroit. I can see a trade with the Clippers. I can see a lot of deals out there. But the Austin Ainge thing, really, I think that resonates. It resonates with me just because of the relationship and his understanding of the Celtics. It eliminates a lot of the crap that you might have to deal with in negotiating. And you just got to get straight to the point. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised to see the Celtics dealing with the Utah Jazz this summer. You let me know. I've floated some of this stuff on Twitter, and people seem to react positively to it. I do not think Walker Kessler's coming, but I can see Sexton, Collins possibly, Clarkson possibly. Those are all names that are out there. Is there one that you would prefer over the other? You let me know in the comment section of the YouTube page. You can watch the show there. Hop into the comment section. Let me know what your feelings are. You can listen to the show everywhere. It's 5 days a week. It's free. Everydayers, you know this. Thank you so much. I hope you encourage your friends and everybody to listen to it by sharing. Tell everyone that they can be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.